Red and blue lights flashed against my living room windows like a low-budget thriller. 3 police cruisers parked in my driveway, engines humming as officers stepped out with faces stuck between confusion and exasperation. Neighbors poked their heads out from behind fences and shrubs, their whispers buzzing like static. I opened the door, coffee mug in hand, half believing I was trapped in a fever dream. An officer voice, flat as a board, asked if I was keeping a young man from recovering. I blinked, brain jumbled. Then I noticed Hermeline Whitaker, HOA president, arms crossed, smirked, cutting sharp enough to cut steel, standing on my lawn like she'd just written her own courtroom battle. In her opinion, her son required my house-me house for emotional healing, and I was the cold-blooded squatter in his way to inner peace. I laughed out loud. The type of laugh that occurs when reality jumps the shark. A year ago, I'd retired after a 20-year career as a paramedic and purchased this property in Serenity Lane, a peaceful suburb where birdsong welcomed the dawn, and my backyard was spacious enough for my canoe and my sanity. The deed was mine, paid in full, every permit signed and filed. What I hadn't bargained for was Marlene, a woman who used her HOA badge like a scepter and treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. At first, she was just nuisance Cessny remarks regarding my mailbox's blue passive-aggressive smiles during community meetings. But this 911 call to evict me because her adult son needed my house as a healing sanctuary. This was crazy even. For her, the officers weren't falling for her drama. Their eyes flicked back and forth like we were players in some weird reality show. Marlene went off on a tirade about trauma, healing, holistic alignment, and how her son needed my bay windows for sunlight therapy. One officer coughed to hide a chuckle. I invited them in with an offer of coffee. One accepted, another looked at my paramedic certifications hanging on the wall. I pulled out a tablet and played a recording of the previous HOA meeting, where Marlene joked about removing me to give her son my house if she could find the right excuse, her own words. If we tell him he has to meditate or something, we can eliminate the canoe guy. An officer's eyebrow shot up. He turned to Marlene and asked, "Ma'am, does your son have a legal claim to this property?" "Any emergency declaration." Her face turned beet red. She stammered about emotional boundaries, but her story was coming apart at the seams faster than a cheap sweater. The officers concluded there was no crime, no eviction, just a waste of their time. They left after advising Marlene to refrain from abusing 911. She stood in my yard seething and hissed, "This isn't over." I nodded. "That's what the bad guy says." In Act 2. She didn't laugh. What she didn't know was that I'd already called my friend Laura, a civil attorney who lived for shredding HOA nonsense. I sent her the police audio, the meeting recording, and my security footage. She was drafting a cease and desist letter before the cruisers even left. The next morning, a flyer was taped to my door announcing an emergency HOA gathering on neighborhood well-being and property rezoning for emotional recovery. Marlene had rebranded her eviction plan as a public health campaign. It was ridiculous but menacing. Some of the HOA members were foolish enough to believe it. That night, an anonymous neighbor alerted me. Marlene was going to bring a vote to rezone my property as temporary therapeutic housing. My home was the only one on the list. I cleared my schedule. This was going to get interesting. I spent the evening preparing my arsenal: deed title, certificates, email threads, recordings, timestamps. Laura texted a smiling emoji, inquiring whether I was ready to make the meeting go viral. I responded with a doorbell cam, still of Marlene attempting to rotate my porch gnome to face away from her house. Her pettiness was a present that kept giving. As I locked up for the evening, I wasn't afraid, just wondering how far she'd go before stumbling over her own ego. I'd seen actual trauma pulled people out, wrecks revived overdose victims. Marlene's soap opera didn't faze me. Wrong paramedic to mess with. I grumbled, setting the alarm game. On the following day, Marlene's house was a hub of activity. Her SUV was parked askew, and her son, bleached hair in a man bun, wearing a tank top, screaming energy lug bags while complaining about bad lighting for his live stream. This was the traumatized soul who needed my home. He didn't look broken, just moved in. He ambled over uninvited and announced, "Yo, Mom says we're moving in soon. Need room for my yoga tent and some natural light. I gestured to the street. Try a therapist's office, better vibes. He sneered, muttering about negative energy, and slunk back to Marlene, who observed through binoculars like a suburban spy. Another HOA notice came calling for me to attend a conflict resolution session at the clubhouse for healing dialogue. It rire of self-help, drill. Laura made me go, but document everything. The clubhouse was full, neighbors bewildered by the display. Marlene stood at the front, her son slumped alongside her, scrolling his phone. She spoke to the audience like a televangelist talking about mental health and how my house was critical to healing. She, crying crocodile tears, then pulled out a letter from Dr. Serenity Glow stating her son required a waterside house to recover from a breakup. Laura and I had exchanged glances. No such therapist were present. Laura stood slamming a folder on the table. She browsed my deed titles and HOA confirmations, then recited all licensed therapists in the state, none named Serenity Glow. She revealed Marlene's social media posts gloating about commandeering my home for her cooking videos captioned, "Manifesting a second kitchen by fall." The room changed. A neighbor whispered, "This feels illegal." Another wondered why the HOA was concerned about a breakup. Then her son stood surprising everyone. "I don't even want the house." He said Mom's obsessed with the lighting for her food vlogs. Marlene's face froze. She yanked his arm hissing, but the truth was out. Laura turned to the board. "This healing session is over." Outside neighbors gossiped. A board member apologized, promising to handle it internally. I upgraded my security, more cameras, motion-triggered audio warning. "This property is under surveillance. Step back or star in court." Marlene's son posted an Instagram story apologizing for the retreat failure and pleading followers to Venmo him for a Costa Rica detox. Laura sent me the screenshot with the caption, "Clown 3 days of silence from Marlene set my nerves on edge." She wasn't the quitting type. I mounted an HD camera and a GPS sensor to my canoe rack, hoping for anything. Thursday afternoon, my phone pinged. Motion at the side gate. The live feed displayed 2 shapes sneaking by one of them in a camo sweatshirt with a duffel bag, and the other wearing an oversized HOA shirt prying on the gate using a crowbar. My talking speaker played, "Warning, you're trespassing," police informed. They stood there, one letting go of the crowbar and the other tripping into a bush after muting his phone. I observed popcorn at hand as they ran falling over a sprinkler. I uploaded the clip to Laura, and she laughed so hard she almost choked. She filed an injunction against Marlene with restraining order for attempted break-in and advised us to go public. That night, I streamed the video on the neighborhood app comparing Marlene's 911 call to her goon's break-in attempt. Comments burst outrage, shock, amusement. Then I saw it. One trespasser had live-streamed their spiritual cleansing of my stolen space. The irony was thicker than fog. The next morning, Marlene showed up at my door with the trespassers now acting as diplomats. She claimed they had misread the property line while on a wellness inspection. I questioned whether inspections employed crowbars. Her face quivered. She threatened that stifling her son's emotional development would be my fault. I played the break-in audio loud enough for the street to hear. Her cronies' voices' scheming entry resonated. She stormed off, minions in tow. Laura phoned. The judge signed the order. Marlene was kept off my property, with criminal charges pending if she attempted again. But she was not finished. Flyers covered the neighborhood, calling a special vote to take back wellness space, suggesting to rezone my home as an emotional recovery zone. A mock-up displayed my house with candles in all the windows and a Healing Lives Here banner. I wanted to scream and laugh. Marlene was going Allen, betting on HOA policy to steal my home. I let her talk, let her flyers circulate while gathering evidence. Her son's audio, the fake therapist letter video of her carrying my porch swing, saying it was community property. The emergency meeting was a circus. The clubhouse was packed out. Marlene, in a power suit, stood next to lavender candles, passing out reclaim wellness pamphlets. She prattled on about spiritual decline and communal healing, then asked me to talk about my resistance. I approached with Laura, stopped and broadcast the break-in livestream. I played her son's confession, then handed out the forged therapist letter. "Does this look like healing?" I demanded. The room burst out. The HOA president called a recess, Marlene yelled about misinterpretation, but no one listened. She'd overplayed her hand. The next morning, hammering awakened me. Across the street, Marlene and her followers constructed a healing structure in the park, a wooden frame streamers and a banner yelling, "Calm Community Healing Starts Now." Speakers blared her slogans, reclaimed the space. Her son, in a white robe, asserted, "My house blocked soil vibrations I recorded from my porch, coffee in hand." Marlene declared an on-the-spot vote to rezone my property, handing out ballots with just yes or absolutely. Laura marched up, demanding the bylaws Section 12 had to have my consent for rezoning. I said, "Not given." Marlene's smile cracked. She gabbled about spiritual authority, but the crowd turned sour. Then she set light to ceremonial bonfire, a drum of pamphlets and herbs that erupted in a smoky plume. Someone shrieked. The fire marshal showed up, hosing it down. Marlene coughed mascara running as the crowd interspersed. Laura provided the HOA president, Tom, with a file of evidence, pictures, videos, complaints from residents. He grumbled, "This is getting too extreme." That night, there was notice left on my door. An emergency vote in 2 days to consider Marlene's board status. A neighbor stopped by Greg, a developer whose lot he owned, Marlene craved to use for her healing zone. She'd attempted to purchase it, then threatened with a zoning challenge based upon her son's medical recitation. Greg offered to share with me. Her email sent a mistake. I purchased the lot that evening, putting up a sign in her direction. Healing. Incomplete, redirect energy elsewhere. The emergency meeting was full. Marlene arrived wearing sunglasses, her son behind silent. Tom read from the agenda a vote to oust Marlene for abuse of power, falsified records, and trust abuses. She insisted on speaking, spinning a tale of love and martyrdom. Laura came back at her with evidence: the 911 call, fake letter break-in, bonfire zoning email. The board voted 5 yes 1, abstention 0 for Marlene. She froze, glared at me, and muttered something venomous. Her son followed her out, head down. A week later, her son apologized on my porch, admitting Marlene coerced him. He was moving away and sold me his Jeep. I parked it in view of her windows. Marlene's house went quiet. No flyers. No chance. The neighborhood breathed again. I stood on my lot sign, gleaming. No cop lights, no ceremonies, just peace. Marlene's falsehoods had unspooled, because truth does not flex to vibes or egos. I shut my door. Lights off. Story finished.